"You're not a team player, Selena." That was exactly what he said before sliding the termination letter across the table. Already printed, already signed. 3 minutes. That's all it took for my first conversation with the new CEO. Just long enough for him to misjudge everything that mattered, and make the one mistake he didn't realize. Assuming I didn't already know what he had done back in Chicago. It was 10:35 on a Monday, 3 days since his arrival. Our new CEO, the board called him a strategic disruptor. I called him a man in a rush to rewrite history in his own image. I'd seen these types before, different suits, same sharp ego. He barely stood when I entered, no handshake, just a nod. "Selena," he said. "Let's not waste time." I sat down, the red folder resting on my lap. He started speaking first. 8 years. That's a long stretch to do the same thing, reviews, compliance, oversight. Necessary, yes, but not enough for his vision. Words polished smooth like marble. "I'm restructuring leadership," he said. "I need people who act fast. They told me you're competent, but not a fit for what's next." There it was. No questions about my work, my flagged risks from last quarter, the system I rebuilt after the 2019 financial snafu. None of it mattered. He reached for a paper, signed and ready. "Oh, I'm terminating your position effective immediately. HR will follow up. You'll be treated fairly," he said. 3 minutes. That's how long it took to erase years of work. I didn't react, didn't argue. I reached into my bag, placed the red folder gently on his desk. He didn't touch it. "I won't need that," he said. I looked at him. Really looked. Fingers trembling as he adjusted his cuff. Confident, but not calm. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked out. I didn't mention that the folder's contents, discrepancies, questionable vendor accounts, a flagged international transfer, had already been sent, one to corporate legal, one to the firm's largest client, one to a journalist I knew years ago. 3 days before Selena Smith would be fired, I sat at my office on the 3rd floor, West Wing, away from executive noise, when my monitor chimed with a new message. Too early for vendor spam, too late for internal updates. The subject line blank, sender using her old company address, a Kestrel Finance domain, shut down years ago. The name, Jennifer Moreno, Jen, quiet but brilliant in risk assessment, from the same firm the CEO had come from. Jen had vanished years ago after a forced restructure. No LinkedIn, no holiday emails. Why now? One line in the email, "Don't let him do it again." No greeting, no signature. 7 words that stopped my pulse. I refreshed, checked timestamps, 6:03 a.m., 90 minutes before it hit my inbox. I tried replying. User not found. No record in server logs. It bypassed every filter. Her number? Disconnected. By 8:15, coffee untouched, I replayed every word from our last conversation. "Something is wrong, Selena. They're moving money, it's bigger than accounting." She spoke of a partner project Harold led, offshore accounts labeled regional grants. Never proved it, always afraid. And now, out of nowhere, a ghost message, "Don't let him do it again." The phrase echoed, relentless. I accessed an old thumb drive, where Jen's training modules were stored. 3 folders empty, 1 archived, Risk Finch. PDFs of internal reviews, vendor blacklists, memos. 1 file stood out, client transfer variants. I opened page after page. Names didn't match logs. Sign-offs? Harold's initials. Anxiety turned into focus. I printed proof, needed evidence, not instinct. But why now? 7 words from a vanished colleague. Warning me, urging me, don't let him do it again. I called the number buried under J. Moreno Kestrel. Ring, click. Older, rougher voice. "Yes," she said. "He's here, Harold. The new CEO." 2 minutes later, encrypted chat. "He's setting up shadow accounts," I typed. She confirmed. Patterns from years ago, hidden under NDAs. The scan wasn't just evidence, it was leverage. Copies made, secure backup, legal contact, and one slipped back into the red folder I would carry 2 days later. Internal records accessed under temporary credentials. Transfers filed under vague categories, same figure recurring, $240,000 every 14 days, routed through dormant accounts. A short reference tag, LGR4B827. Client alias? Lyndon R., same Jen had uncovered before, spelling altered to avoid duplication alerts. $8 million in approved payments to a non-existent client. Vendor records? Nothing, except digital stamps, one standing out. Harold McCullen admin approving transfers under his name. I documented screenshots, exported logs, printed a report, all went into the red folder. I walked into the compliance briefing room. 5 people, for long-term colleagues, 1 newcomer from Harold's team. Coffee sipped, printouts shuffled, no pause as I entered. I cleared my throat. Silence. A pattern of irregular disbursements inconsistent with controls. Brian Carson, Executive Director. Eyes neutral, department restructuring, compliance matters go through new channels. I held his gaze. Not process. Fraud. $8 million ghost transfers. Same structure Harold used at previous firm. Evidence ignored. Folder felt heavier. I understood then, I wasn't a player, I was a piece. But I wasn't silent. I had already shared the folder. Already given the story away. And now, I walked out, unbroken, ready. By 10:12 a.m., I was sitting in the cafe. Across from the West Wing, laptop open, headphones on, pretending to scroll through emails while my mind replayed every move Harold McCullen had made in the past quarter. I could see the skyscraper windows reflecting sunlight, the CEO pacing inside like a caged animal, unaware that Selena Smith had already rewritten the rules of engagement. Steam rose from the espresso in my cup, mingling with the faint scent of pastries, yet I barely noticed. Every detail mattered, the transfers, the logs, the hidden accounts. One misstep, one overlooked signature, and it could all collapse. But I wasn't afraid. Precision was my ally, and knowledge my weapon, sharpened over years of being underestimated, dismissed, overlooked. The red folder rested beside me, its weight heavier than it seemed. Each page had been meticulously reviewed, every signature highlighted, every account number double-checked. My fingers traced the edges almost absent-mindedly. I glanced at my watch. Harold was about to begin the quarterly briefing. Perfect timing. He had no idea that the evidence I had compiled would dismantle the empire he had been building, brick by brick. My pulse didn't quicken, it steadied. Calm focus was the only armor I needed. I remembered Jen's cryptic message again, don't let him do it again. Her disappearance had left a void, a ghost. Hovering on the edge of my conscience, reminding me of the responsibility I carried. I understood it clearly, she had trusted me to finish what she started. And I would. I could either protect the empire Harold had built, or expose its cracks, and I had already chosen the latter. Inside the skyscraper, Harold clicked through slides with mechanical precision, metrics flying across the screen. The board nodded, impressed, oblivious to the irregularities hidden in plain sight. I connected my laptop to the secure line, the red folder ready, every encrypted message queued. Selena Smith never made a scene. I walked in like a shadow, calm and deliberate. Before we proceed, I said, voice steady, there are anomalies you need to see. Murmurs erupted. Harold froze mid-slide, disbelief and fear etching his features. Projected on the screen, spreadsheets, timestamps, digital signatures. Offshore channels, all linked back to him. Gasps and whispers spread through the room. Board members turned to me, eyes wide. Harold stumbled, attempting explanations, but the weight of proof was undeniable. Minutes later, the legal team arrived, confirming everything I had presented. By 11:45 a.m., decisions were made. Internal audits expanded, executives temporarily suspended, Harold escorted to HR for questioning. The empire once thought untouchable was unraveling, and I had orchestrated it silently, efficiently. Emails flooded in. Clients, internal departments, and legal contacts moved faster than expected. The red folder had become a weapon of truth. And I, Selena Smith, had not only exposed deception but reclaimed the power that had always been mine. Walking back to my cafe, I reflected on the arc that led here, 3 weeks since Harold arrived, 3 minutes to deliver. His downfall, 3 days of Jen's warning, and years of preparation. Power wasn't in offices or titles. It was in knowledge, timing, and courage. As I sipped my coffee, I allowed myself a brief moment to breathe, but even that pause was filled with calculation. The city outside moved in its oblivious rhythm, people hurrying to meetings, glancing at phones, trapped in routines they believed mattered. I had seen behind the curtain. I knew how empires crumbled from within, how pride blinded the mighty. The spreadsheets, the accounts, the emails, they were not just numbers, they were a map of trust betrayed and ambition exposed. Each click, each scroll, each subtle confirmation had brought me closer to a truth no one else wanted to face. By 12:30 p.m., the red folder was secured in a locked briefcase, its digital backup scattered across encrypted servers. The board convened. Emergency sessions, legal teams dissected the evidence, and Harold sat in stunned silence, a king dethroned in his own palace. Selena Smith had not sought revenge for petty slights or ego, she had acted with surgical precision, guided by a code only she understood. Even as chaos erupted inside the building, the street below remained indifferent. Taxis honked, pedestrians weaved around one another, coffee carts served their morning rush. I observed it all, knowing the fragility of human perception. To the world, everything looked normal, but I held the secret pulse of the empire, the heartbeat of power that no one else could see. It was intoxicating, almost sacred, to carry that knowledge. And as I packed the folder into my bag, I reflected on the lessons embedded in every calculated move: trust sparingly, watch carefully, and act decisively. Selena Smith had not only dismantled a regime of arrogance and greed but had done so with the elegance of a conductor guiding a symphony. Every board member, every client, every account trembled under the weight of her silent authority. Walking back to my apartment, the city swallowed me in its chaos, yet I felt untouchable, unshakable. The empire had learned its vulnerability. I had proven that power didn't belong to titles or offices, it belonged to the mind. The patient strategist, the unseen hand that shapes outcomes before anyone even realizes a game was being played. And Selena Smith? She was, as always, 3 steps ahead. By 1:15 p.m., the building was a storm of whispers and tension. Every executive, assistant, and intern seemed to move with hesitant precision, as if afraid to disturb the fragile equilibrium Selena Smith had created. Emails pinged incessantly, each notification a drumbeat, marking the unraveling of Harold McCullen's carefully curated empire. I observed from the shadows of the atrium, a silent conductor orchestrating chaos without lifting a finger. The boardroom had transformed into a theater of accountability. Chairs scraped against polished floors, and the usually confident voices of senior executives cracked under scrutiny. One by one, they presented their justifications, their defenses crumbling as evidence projected from my red folder proved undeniable. Harold paced in a corner, muttering fragments of excuses that no longer held power. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and detachment. This wasn't revenge, it was a revelation. Outside the glass walls, sunlight fractured into sharp lines across the marble floor, mirroring the cracks forming within the corporate walls. Every glance from the board toward me was a silent acknowledgement. Selena Smith had shifted the balance. Even those who had doubted her capabilities now recognized the precision of her mind. I allowed myself a slow sip of coffee, letting the quietude of control wash over me. Yet amidst the triumph, a flicker of unease crept in. Power, I knew, was never permanent. The empire would try to rebuild, alliances would shift, and whispers of retaliation would circulate. Strategy required foresight, and foresight required patience. I wasn't naive, I had prepared for contingencies. Every account, every document, every backup in the encrypted servers was a safety net woven from years of careful observation. But even the strongest net can fray. Then came the moment of confrontation. Harold, finally cornered, turned his gaze directly on me. His eyes betrayed a storm of disbelief, fear, and a grudging respect. You've gone too far," he whispered. But his words held no weight. Actions had already spoken louder than threats or titles. With a calm, measured voice, I responded, "I've simply revealed what was always hidden. You chose the empire you built. I merely pointed out its flaws." As the afternoon unfolded, the cascade of consequences grew. Legal advisors recommended immediate audits, clients requested assurances, and the internal communications team scrambled to manage the narrative. Each move, each reaction, further cemented Selena Smith's silent dominance. My presence was subtle, yet omnipresent, a reminder that the unseen strategist always held the ultimate leverage. By 3 p.m., the chaos had settled into a tense equilibrium. Harold McCullen's authority was fractured, the board cautiously optimistic, and I remained the calm observer. The city outside continued in its oblivious rhythm, taxis weaving, pedestrians hurrying, the world unaware that a corporate empire had shifted in a single day. I packed the red folder once more, securing its contents. Every detail, every line of data, had been accounted for. Victory wasn't just about exposing corruption, it was about precision, timing, and control. But the day was far from over. I moved through the corridors, hearing hushed conversations that quickly silenced at my approach. Allies and adversaries alike recalibrated their strategies, each trying to predict the moves of someone who seemed always 3 steps ahead. Security cameras blinked in rhythm with my footsteps, documenting every motion, every glance, yet failing to capture the unseen calculations in my mind. Every gesture, every email forwarded in secrecy, was part of a grander design I had laid months before. The tension reached a new level when I entered the CEO's private office. The walls, lined with accolades and photographs of supposed triumphs, now felt oppressive, almost suffocating. Harold's assistant, usually brisk and composed, froze at my entrance, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Miss Smith," she murmured, her voice trailing off as she realized words could not contain the storm brewing within these walls. I allowed a small, deliberate pause, letting the weight of presence settle. Power was as much about perception as it was about action, and perception now tilted irrevocably in my favor. I leaned against the edge of the desk, scanning the room with an analytical gaze, noting every nervous twitch, every uncertain gesture. The Empire's foundation had always been shaky, its cracks now laid bare under the light of scrutiny. By late afternoon, the board called an emergency session, and I was summoned not as an intruder, but as a consultant, the architect of the new order. Conversations shifted from panic to cautious collaboration. Strategies were redrawn, roles reconsidered, and while Harold McCullen attempted to salvage dignity, the reality was clear: Selena Smith had redefined the rules of the game. Every decision, every misstep of his team, every whispered doubt had converged into a singular outcome: the realization that control was no longer his to wield. As I exited the building at dusk, the city's skyline reflected off the glass towers like shards of broken glass, each one symbolizing a piece of the fractured empire. I walked deliberately, every step measured, every breath controlled. The streets hummed with life, indifferent to the quiet revolution that had unfolded above. And in that moment, a singular truth crystallized: true strategy was invisible, victories were silent, and those who underestimated Selena Smith would never see her coming until it was far too late. The morning air felt heavier than usual as Selena Smith stepped into the glass-walled corridor. Every click of her heels echoed like a countdown. The red folder rested under her arm, thicker now, stuffed with the evidence she had painstakingly verified over the past week. She didn't know how many of Harold McCullen's moves she had anticipated correctly, but the ripple of compliance alarms and internal chatter told her she was closer than ever. Each department she passed seemed to whisper behind closed doors, and even the interns glanced up nervously, as if sensing she carried a storm. Selena's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number simply read, "He's accelerating. Move carefully." No name, no sender. It wasn't surprising: her network had grown quiet, cautious, protective. She had trained herself to parse meaning from the barest words, and these 6 words alone set her pulse racing. She glanced at her watch. 8:42 a.m. She had less than 3 hours before the board briefing. Time wasn't on her side, but she never needed it to be, she only needed leverage. At her desk, she opened her encrypted laptop and reviewed the transfer logs one more time. Patterns repeated across 3 shell accounts. Each entry precise, approved under McCullen's digital signature. The amounts were staggering, yet methodical: $480,000, $240,000, $360,000, all routed in perfectly staggered intervals. Someone else might have called it cunning, she called it arrogant. Harold believed no one could trace him. Selena knew better. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Rachel, a junior analyst and one of the few people she still trusted, peered in. "Selena, they're asking for a pre-briefing summary. Board wants it in 20." Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it. Selena nodded. "Draft it. I'll review before submission." As Rachel left, Selena noticed the flicker of fear and respect in her eyes. Fear for the consequences, respect for the tenacity that Selena had quietly cultivated. Emails and messages pinged continuously. Each alert another reminder of the clock she could not stop. Internal chatter hinted that Harold had begun shifting personnel, attempting to isolate potential whistleblowers. It didn't matter. Selena had anticipated it. She had staged backups, copies of sensitive files distributed among secure contacts, and more importantly, she had evidence that could not be erased. She leaned back, fingers steepled, breathing steady. For the first time, she allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of control. At 10:03, the elevator dinged. 2 executives stepped out, a prelude to the board members who would arrive any minute. Harold McCullen was nowhere in sight. That absence, rather than relief, sparked tension. Selena adjusted the folder beneath her arm, her mind tracing every possibility, every potential sabotage, every misstep Harold could make before she presented her evidence. The board had underestimated him once, she would not. Minutes later, the conference room doors opened. 5 board members entered, their expressions neutral, masking the curiosity and doubt she had anticipated. Selena acknowledged each with a nod. No greetings were exchanged, formality was a veneer. She placed the red folder carefully on the table, its presence alone commanding attention. It wasn't just a folder. It was the sum of months of silent vigilance, proof that the Empire Harold thought untouchable had cracks running deep. Graham Thorne, a senior board member, seated at the head, studied her carefully. "Selena, we've been briefed on your preliminary findings. What exactly are we looking at?" His tone was neutral, but his eyes betrayed calculation. Selena exhaled, steadying herself. "This," she said, tapping the folder, "is an unbroken chain of unauthorized transactions and shadow accounts. The same methods Harold McCullen perfected at his previous firm, now replicated here. Each document is verifiable, each pattern unmistakable. As she spoke, she noticed the subtle shifts, fingers tapping, heads nodding slightly, murmurs contained beneath breath. The board was processing, not dismissing. Selena continued, her voice calm but firm, detailing the financial anomalies, the shell entities, the recurring sums, and the forged signatures. Every slide, every spreadsheet reinforced a single narrative: meticulous design, deliberate concealment, and high-stakes arrogance. Halfway through the presentation, a junior legal advisor attempted to interject, cautioning about exposure. Selena anticipated it, pausing deliberately. Transparency, she said, eyes scanning the room, is the only safeguard. Obfuscation has enabled this behavior. The evidence isn't just a warning, it's leverage, and it demands decisive action. No one argued. The folder, once a passive repository of proof, had transformed the room. By 11:45, the discussion turned to immediate action. Internal investigations, freezing of accounts, and suspension protocols were debated, each measure echoing her strategic foresight. Selena remained composed, listening, confirming, clarifying. She wasn't seeking recognition, only accountability. Every step, every recommendation aligned to neutralize the threat Harold posed. As the board adjourned, Graham Thorne's voice stopped her. Selena, your diligence is remarkable. Your evidence will guide our actions. One condition: your findings remain confidential until the board approves disclosures. She nodded once, understanding the weight of patience. Control wasn't just power, it was timing. She gathered the red folder, now a symbol of precision, vigilance, and leverage, ready for the final steps that would dismantle the carefully constructed empire that Harold McCullen had thought invincible. The hum of the city below the 42nd floor was faint, but to Selena Smith, every distant siren and honking horn felt like a pulse syncing with her own. The past weeks had led to this moment, the culmination of calculated patience, careful surveillance, and relentless anticipation. The red folder rested on her desk, but she barely glanced at it. Every piece of evidence, every spreadsheet, every log file had already done its work. Harold McCullen's empire was teetering, and she held the fulcrum. Selena's phone buzzed with encrypted messages. They're moving against him. Brace for fallout. She smiled faintly. Not satisfaction, not arrogance, precision. Timing was everything. She had to wait until the board executed their strategy. Premature action could compromise months of preparation. A soft knock on her office door pulled her back from the edge of anticipation. Rachel entered again, this time clutching a printed copy of the board's preliminary resolution. They've frozen the accounts, Rachel whispered, eyes wide. McCullen's name is already under internal investigation. The board is preparing a full disclosure to shareholders. Selena nodded, already aware. She had anticipated the speed of their reaction, and yet seeing it unfold in real time never failed to thrill her. The quiet chaos outside her office mirrored the storm she had orchestrated from within. Her mind drifted briefly to Harold. Where was he now? Likely in his private office, unaware of the full magnitude of the consequences that were closing in. Selena imagined the panic that would ripple through him as he realized that no manipulations, no threats, no charm could alter the immutable facts she had compiled. She allowed herself a momentary smirk. The mighty had fallen, not with fanfare, but with inevitability. By noon, the board convened an emergency meeting. Selena followed in her usual quiet, commanding way, placing the red folder on the central table once more. This time, however, it wasn't evidence, it was the script for a reckoning. Each board member received their copy, each page meticulously annotated, ensuring no ambiguity, no loophole, no misstep. Her reputation, her credibility, and her patience had aligned perfectly. She could feel it. This meeting would mark the definitive turning point. Harold McCullen finally appeared, escorted by 2 security personnel. His usual confidence was a brittle mask, faltering with each step closer to the conference table. Selena observed silently as the board members greeted him with calculated politeness that barely concealed their contempt. He tried his usual charm, but it bounced off the walls like ricocheting bullets. No one was falling for it anymore. Mr. McCullen, Graham Thorne began, voice steady, we've reviewed the evidence presented by Selena Smith. Your transactions, your accounts, and your internal maneuvers indicate a clear pattern of unauthorized activity. Harold's eyes flicked to Selena, a mixture of disbelief and fury. He opened his mouth to protest, but the prepared documents and logs lay before him like an unassailable wall. Each file, each spreadsheet, each note dismantled the empire he had believed untouchable. Selena spoke, calm and precise, the evidence is irrefutable. Every step, every signature, every transfer is documented. Attempts to conceal or mislead will only compound the consequences. This isn't personal, it's procedural. Accountability doesn't negotiate. Harold's lips pressed into a thin line, anger simmering beneath the surface. For the first time, he wasn't in control. The board deliberated quickly, and by early afternoon, McCullen was suspended pending full legal review. His personal assets were flagged, and multiple governmental agencies were now involved. Selena remained in the room until the final signatures were collected. She did not speak, did not celebrate. Her work had been precise, her strategy flawless, and the results were tangible. Victory, for her, was silent but absolute. After the board cleared the room, Selena lingered for a moment, staring at the skyline outside her office window. The city continued unaware of the quiet upheaval that had just occurred in its glass towers. She allowed herself a slow exhale. Months of patience, meticulous observation, and calculated courage had culminated in this moment. The empire that Harold McCullen had built on arrogance and deceit was now unraveling, and she had been the unseen hand guiding its collapse. Rachel returned to hand her a coffee. "Do you feel satisfied?" she asked quietly. Selena took it, setting the cup down without a word. Satisfied wasn't the right word. She felt controlled, precise, and respected. That was enough. The storm had passed, the empire weakened, and the final pieces of a carefully executed plan were in place. She gathered her red folder one last time, walking toward the elevator. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, but inside, she had already rewritten the rules of power. Selena Smith had not only survived the storm, she had orchestrated it, and now, nothing could touch her.